I'm going to show you some never before seen kid art of mine, some of my childhood art, just so you see really where I started. As a kid, I was the aggressive drawer. Drawing was my thing. And I actually, in my late elementary school years, I gave up on art, and I just it wasn't interesting for me anymore. And only this year did I get back and start making art again. So this is when I was around, my late elementary school years. This was one of my last pieces. The camera's falling. This was one of my last pieces. And now we're diving into 1 year ago. This is my first ever face with proportions, and keep this face in mind, because this is the starting point for all these other sketchbooks I'm going to show you today. A couple other works of art from my elementary school years. And interestingly enough, back then I kind of drew animals more. Another face with proportions from a while ago from elementary school. And as you can see, everything you're going to see, it didn't come naturally. Drawing faces definitely didn't come naturally for me. Here is another time where it all started. This drawing I had, look, this is just some random page I found lying around the house, and I doodled on the back of it. And this eye, you might recognize this eye. This is my first ever video on YouTube. I drew this eye, put the camera in the hand. It's all shaky because I didn't have a camera stand or anything. But I drew this eye, and this is really where it all started. Now, if we take a look at the next thing I did, which was, this is my kids sketchbook. See, this is from a long time ago. This over here is when I started dabbling in a little more with portraits. I started gaining an interest again, and these two are my first big portraits, I'd say. Took me forever. If you remember this, then you've been around on my channel for some time, so congrats to you. And this is my first ever drawing challenge. I realized when I was drawing the portraits you saw before that I had a lot of trouble drawing noses. And this, I present to you, the nose drawing challenge. And as you can see, this is where I began. And I have a video of this on my channel. Just go to oldest, and it's like the first or second. And so as you can see, look, a lot of progress, honestly. This was, I think, over the course of like 30 days. I can't say I drew every day or anything. And then after that, of course, I was on the ball was rolling. And here is another challenge you might recognize, my first ever portrait drawing challenge. And this is where we started, guys, 1 year ago. I think this was drawn without a reference. This photo and this one. Yeah, it's scary, but everyone starts somewhere. We got a couple other portraits, and I have a video of this on my channel. Again, I'll leave a link in the description for all the videos that you see me showing here. We got some more, and the thing with these challenges, you could see I was drawing really, really small. I was kind of scared of going too big. Like, look how small this is. And I think that was, when you're learning, I think that's a good thing. Draw smaller portraits because they're easier to finish, and you got more, you can fit more onto a spread. And now after this, I started drawing with watercolors. I had an interest of, let's take this further. And this is where I took it further with this portrait. I actually drew this with a kid's set of Crayola watercolors that I found lying around the house. Hadn't been used in years. And it really goes to show that you don't need, if you want to start, just start. Don't let your materials or lack of them stop you or hinder you in any way. And this is the first watercolor portrait I ever made. And it's really amazing to see where you started and where you ended up now, because a lot of times in life you get so caught up in just moving forward that you forget to look back. Now on this page is some more experiments with watercolor. Now this eye is also drawn with kids' watercolors. I experimented, as well as this over here. Right after I made these two portraits, you see this eye, and this eye is actually painted with expensive watercolors. So Winsor & Newton, you know, all the brands. And I drew this watercolor eye as a comparison to see just the difference that watercolors, you know, the price of your art supplies can make. Now, when I transitioned from from cheap watercolors to expensive watercolors, I remember the main thing I noticed was just it was much easier to paint with them. The colors were more vibrant, and I think even though I wasn't a pro at watercolors before, here's some color swatches, even though I wasn't a pro at watercolors, as you saw before, by having a more expensive set of watercolors kind of gave me that additional boost to continue painting, because it was just, the process was more enjoyable. And so over here is when I started drawing my 100 heads challenge, and so this is kind of like the second portrait drawing challenge, and I started out with pencil, as you can see, but we kind of transitioned into watercolors, and I made a video about this, and in it I was talking about AI art, and I'll leave a link, of course, to that also in the description below if you're interested. And here's another portrait. I think this was my last portrait of this group. Now after this comes this page. These two portraits that you see over here was my entry into a Sam Does Art challenge. I think Sam Does Art came out with a draw this in your style, so I drew his two characters, and with these two portraits I drew them with a new method of proportions that I found online on a YouTube video, and these two portraits were the first that I used measurements for, and I kind of tried out drawing with proportions instead of, say, tracing my reference or just, you know, drawing it freestyle without any guidance. This portrait over here was my first ever gouache portrait. I remember it took me hours and hours to figure it out. These two were done with watercolors, but this was done with gouache, and I really like how it turned out. The skin turned out nice, but it was my first ever trying out gouache, and you know, it's kind of patchy in areas. It was where, you know, it's that portrait where you start, right? Looking at this, I'm seeing that it would be nice to, you know, smooth out like the skin with my process, because it was very patchy. I was overworking the paper a little bit, and you can see in like a bit of the grain on her face. Now this was when Ariel, the Little Mermaid, the movie came out, and I drew her, and this is also with gouache. So these two are with watercolor, these two are with gouache. It's not my best portrait, but it definitely taught me a lot. And this was, you know, see if you can recognize him. Also, from The Little Mermaid, I wanted to do a series, King Triton, but of course I didn't finish him. As you can see if you look closely at my sketch and stuff, I have like a brow line, hair. You see, I kind of like labeled it. I was using this, I was drawing my portraits more intentionally with proportions and measuring things out and, you know, taking my hands and seeing the size of everything. And it's really now an essential part of my process in getting accurate portraits. And it's really interesting. That's how I started, just a YouTube video. Now here's the final sketchbook, and we are going to take a look. Oh, here's some other. See, these sketchbooks are from when I was in elementary school. I had a bazillion sketchbooks, but I'm gonna find the page. Over here is the start and the beginning of the no erase challenge of drawing with no erase at all. This is of course another scrap paper, and I tried drawing with brush pens without erase, And here is how I further tested this out. And this is also a video of a series, actually, of drawing with no erase and just the whole process of drawing each of these faces with no erase. And I have videos for them also. They're gonna be in the description. Now, I personally think that this page was a turning point in my art journey. Drawing with no erase, this whole page is the reason why I became confident enough to start drawing with pen. And this is the page where I started drawing with pen. These two portraits were from my 100 Heads challenge when I started drawing men, more. And as you can see, this was a joint effort of learning to draw with pen and learning to draw men better. I have multiple videos on the topic of how I started drawing with pen. Check out the description if you want to check them out. I had this idea when I started drawing portraits with pen that I really wanted to go out in the street and just draw the pedestrians and draw people. And the goal was to learn to draw with pen easily and fast and accurately, and then eventually go out and give people the portraits that I made of them. Now over here, during around the same time, Inktober was on the rise, and I really wanted to join Inktober for the first time this year. And this you see over here are all the pieces that I made for the Inktober challenge. The prompt for this drawing was path. And as you can see, there's someone that's really confused standing at a path. This one is for rise. This one is for golden, I'm pretty sure. You see the gold cracks like kintsugi, which is a pottery technique, a ancient Japanese technique of mending pottery. And this is actually for angel and devil. I actually took two prompts and combined them into one drawing. I have another page, which is a little uncompleted, of the next 4 prompts on the Inktober challenge. This was drip, and it's with watercolor. I decided to experiment and try something new and make a prompt with watercolor. This is for the prompt chains, and this one over here is for dagger. Now here's one last mini sketchbook I'll show you before we call it a day. This is where I started realizing my dream of drawing people in the streets. I used this little sketchbook so you can see where I ripped the portraits out. I walked up to people and asked if I could draw their portraits, and I ended up giving it to them when I could give it to them. Like, for instance, with this girl, I drew her at the airport, but before I could finish the portrait and give it to her, before I could finish the portrait and give it to her, she had to run away on her flight. Here we got Harry Potter. I hope seeing my personal art journey inspired you to keep going and create in your art, even though every day today might seem that you're not growing. Over the long run, progress is progress, no matter how small, and it amounts to something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!